Born May 8, 1937 in Glen Clove, New York of Long Island, Thomas Ruggles Pynchon Jr. is a contemporary American novelist and writer of short stories. He is sometimes considered a high modernist as opposed to a postmodernist, characterized by his unwavering confidence in science and technology as means to reorder the modern world socially and naturally during the Cold War era. Pynchon was named Student of the Year by his high school newspaper for his use of oddball names, sophomoric or wiseful humor, and odes to illicit drug use throughout his early writings. He went on to study engineering physics at Cornell University before serving a term of 2 years in the Navy. However, upon returning to Cornell, he changed his degree to English and published his first story in the Cornell Writer, drawing on a friend's experience in the Army. Pynchon graduated in 1959. From 1960 to 1962, was employed as a technical writer at Boeing in Seattle. He compiled safety articles for a newsletter in support of the Bomark surface-to-air missile deployed by the U.S. Air Force. Both Pynchon's experience in technical journalism and his knowledge of physics, later combined with his love for popular culture and obscure historical tales and contemporary comic books, led to the mix of history, science, and mathematics that appears in his novels. Pynchon's first novel, V, published in 1963, is a book that is as hard to read as the labyrinth is to navigate. However, while a maze is complicated and irregular, requiring a choice between passages, the labyrinth is only a single path leading to the center. Similarly, each of the characters' exuberant individual paranoias in Pynchon's stories, while absurd, return the reader right back to the central idea Pynchon is parodying, questioning, and exploring. After resigning from Boeing, Pynchon reportedly spent most of his time in his Manhattan Beach apartment writing Gravity's Rainbow, his most renowned novel. He won the National Book Award for Fiction for the book and a unanimous nomination for the Pulitzer Prize Fiction Award, but was turned down for being unreadable and obscene, and even encyclopedically monotonous and static, with so many ideas presented at the same time in the same way. Despite the disagreement as to Pynchon's endurance as an American writer, his wit, daring, and exuberance were thought to exceed those of all his contemporaries. Pynchon flirted with the lifestyle and some of the habits of the beat and hippie countercultures, rejecting traditional standards. It is clear that Pynchon's inclinations towards freedom contrast interestingly and significantly with the institutions of modern technological society. Influenced by such an eclectic group, it's not worth naming every author that influenced Pynchon's fiction style that is wholly his own in the time period. However, James Wood sometimes associates him with the genre of hysterical realism, along with Don DeLeo, David Foster Wallace, and Salman Rushdie, writing the big, ambitious novel that knows 1,000 things but does not know a single human being, and attempts to tell us how the world works rather than how somebody felt about something. Pynchon received a MacArthur Fellowship in 1988 and is frequently cited by Americans as a contender for the Nobel Prize in Literature. It is true that very little else is known about Pynchon's private life. Few photos of him are in circulation. He is often called a recluse by the media. An article published in the Soho Weekly News actually claimed that Pynchon was in fact J.D. Salinger, to which Pynchon's written response was, "Not bad, keep trying." It is said that he moved to California after living in New York and married his literary agent Melody Jackson and fathered a son, Jackson, in 1991. Pynchon's remaining novels, the last one dating 2013, are almost as dense, complex, and esoteric as the first couple, despite aiming towards more conventional subjects. I'll leave you with his identifying words, "Every weirdo in the world is on my wavelength." Nevertheless, continued Callisto, he found in Entropy, or the measure of disorganization for a closed system, an adequate metaphor to apply to certain phenomena in his own world. He saw, for example, the younger generation responding to Madison Avenue with the same spleen his own had once reserved for Wall Street, and in American consumerism discovered a similar tendency from the least to the most probable, from differentiation to sameness, from ordered individuality to a kind of chaos. He found himself, in short, restating Gibbs' prediction in social terms, and envisioned a heat death for his culture in which ideas like heat energy would no longer be transferred, since each point in it would ultimately have the same quantity of energy, and intellectual motion would accordingly cease. Pynchon's dedication to oddball names is first seen here with the tale of Callisto. The name Callisto has mythological origins, but it also refers to one of Jupiter's moons, more specifically to the moon that is thought to leave open the possibility of life, because of a lack of heating. Callisto underwent only a partial differentiation into planetary layers. In the story, the character Callisto tries to recuperate a bird with the possibility of life, as its own lack of heat and the inability of temperature to change, or the inability of heat to do work, could result in heat death. This heat death derives from the concept of entropy, with which Pynchon's name has come to be associated, as he often refers to the way everything beyond matter gradually goes to disorder, or disorganization. According to the second law of thermodynamics, the entropy of an isolated system cannot decrease. The words closed system here refer to the isolated system, that is, the hothouse belonging to Callisto and Obeyed. Outside it is 37 degrees constantly, but walls close in their apartment. Thus, the entropy or disorder of the universe must decrease for a reaction or event to occur, or for the universe over time to proceed towards the most probable state or heat death, as the heat energy would no longer be transferred. To wrap up the scientific side of the story, or Gibbs definition, this most probable pattern is actually a state of equal energy among particles, as collisions cause bodies to exchange heat. The closed system inevitably proceeds towards uniformity or energy of thermodynamic equilibrium. The bird could not be warm because of the uniformity of temperature between Callisto and the bird. At the end of the tale, Obaid finally realizes this and breaks open the window of their apartment so as to equalize the temperature through differentiation of the apartment and the temperature of the outside world, where the bird belongs. The reader is left not knowing if the bird will survive. This sameness and differentiation that occurs in the phrase from differentiation to sameness, from ordered individuality to a kind of chaos, are counterparts of each other that actually complete each other. This mirrors the language and the imagery throughout the rest of Pynchon's Entropy. He talks about fugue music, in which tunes are repeated in complex manners and end in stretto, or quicker successions. Each succession is different than the last, but they are all interdependent, playing on the idea of contrapuntal music or counterpoint, in which melodies are sounded together successively. This theme of duality can also be seen with Entropy referring to thermodynamics and information technology respectively, among the conflicting tales of Meatball and Callisto, which in the end actually become two parts of a whole image. Pynchon compares the loss of free energy to the losses incurred through modernization and the increasing entropy to this disorder of society. This metaphor is precisely and articulately made in social terms, first with a critique on America's greed or consumerism as it played a part in the Great Depression and the stock market crash on Wall Street. In more recent times, Pynchon relates entropy to the generation of media, with Madison Avenue being the most prominent advertising street in New York. Pynchon demonstrates here are Baudelaire-like reactions of spleen or disgust. The idea is that this ordered individuality, while all people receive their ideas or what they think to be their differential preferences from the media, that actually tells us what we want and need, and tells us all the same, eliminates any new ideas from forming. Thus the phrase, intellectual motion would accordingly cease, means both that our intelligence and our culture will lack any innovation or growth, and will therefore become stagnant or uniform.